Carling Country. Carling, world brewers of the great American beer, present stories from America's foremost authors. Stories of trial and endeavor, of the courage of people. Stories from Carling Country.
Tonight's story from Carling Country is another of the works of John Steinbeck. It tells of the courage and spirit of a young Mexican boy. Mr. Steinbeck calls the story Flight.
If you owned a Carling brewery, how would you supply this great beer to people who were far from you? At Carling, we go to the people and brew on the spot. Our philosophy on every can tells why. Time, the maker of beer, can also be the great destroyer. Shipped all the way from America, our great Carling Black Label beer might just lose the lusty, lively taste that makes it great. We couldn't take that risk. That's why we now brew in 12 breweries around the world, as well as in 7 states in America. Carling Black Label is brewed in South Africa and is on sale in the Transvaal, Orange Free State, and Northwestern Cape, and now also in Natal, coming to the Cape Province before long. Carling Black Label, America's lusty, lively beer.
About 15 miles below Monterey, on the wild coast, the Torres family had their farm. A few sloping acres above a cliff that dropped to the brown reefs and to the hissing white waters of the ocean. Mama Torres had 3 children, 2 undersized ones of 12 and 14, Emilio and Rosie, who Mama kept fishing on the rocks below the farm when the sea was kind and when the truant officer was in some distant pub of Monterey County. And there was Pepe, the tall, smiling son of 19, a gentle, affectionate boy, but very lazy. Pepe had a tall head, pointed at the top, and from its peak, coarse black hair grew down like thatch all around. Over his smiling little eyes, Mama cut a straight bang so that he could see. His mouth was as sweet and shapely as a girl's, and his chin was fragile and chiseled. He was loose and gangly, all legs and feet and wrists, and he was very lazy. Mama thought him fine and brave, but she never told him so. She said,
"Some lazy woman must have got into thy father's family, else how could I have a son like thee? When I carried thee, a sneaky, lazy coyote came out of the brush and looked at me one day. That must have made thee so."
See, Mama.
Ah, you are justly proud of your father's knife, eh? You always carry it with you.
See, Mama. When I throw it into the good earth, it keeps the blade sharp and free from rust.
Pepe was proud of his inheritance, his father's knife with a long, heavy blade that folded back into the black handle. There was a button on the handle. When Pepe pressed the button, the blade leapt out, ready for use. The knife was with Pepe always, for it had been his father's knife. One sunny morning, when the sea below the cliffs was glinting and blue and the white surf creamed on the reef, when even the stone mountains looked kindly, Mama Torres called out of the door of the shack.
Pepe! Pepe! I have labors for thee! Pepe! Oh, where is the boy? Pepe! I have labors for thee!
When Mama found him, Pepe was sitting on the ground with his back against a box. His white teeth glistened. On either side of him stood the 2 young ones, tense and expectant. 15 feet away, a redwood post was set in the ground. Pepe's right hand lay limply in his lap, and in the palm the big black knife rested. The blade was closed back into the handle. Pepe looked smiling at the sky. Suddenly, Emilio cried. Pepe's wrist flicked like the head of a snake. The blade seemed to fly open in midair, and then dug into the redwood post, and the black handle
You all day you do foolish things with a knife like a toy baby. Get up on thy huge feet and eat up shoes. Get up!
See, Mama.
Look, big lady, you must catch the horse and put on him thy father's saddle. You must ride to Monterey. The medicine bottle is empty. There is no salt. Go now and catch the horse. There, Peanut. At last you are ready. That's for the medicine, huh? And that's for the salt. That's for the candle to burn for Papa. That's for Dulces, for the little ones. Our friend Mrs. Rodriguez will give you dinner and maybe a bed for the night. When you go to church, say only 10 paternosters and only 25 Ave Marias, eh? Oh, I know, Big Coyote. You would sit there flapping your mouth over Aves all day while you looked at the candles and the holy pictures. That is not good devotion to stare at the pretty things. I would not send thee now alone, thou little one, except for the medicine. It is not good to have no medicine, for who knows when the toothache will come, or the sadness of the stomach. These things are.
Adios, Mama. I will come back soon. You may send me often alone. I am a man.
Oh, thou art a foolish chicken. Oh, how well he rides the horse, and how proud and dignified he looks. Truly, he is nearly a man now. It will be a fine thing to have a man in the house again.
Ramon was near down to the water when Pepe rode on a winded horse to his home flat. Pepe slid off the saddle to the ground.
Who comes? Pepe, is it thou?
See, Mama.
Well, go to sleep then. I thought you would be sleeping at the house of Mrs. Rodriguez. Why do you stand silent there in the darkness? Did you drink wine?
See, Mama. I drank wine.
Well, go to bed then and sleep out the wine.
Light the candle, Mama. I must go away to the mountains.
What is this, Pepe? Are you crazy? There, it is lit. Now, Pepe, what is this you say?
As Mama looked at Pepe, she saw that he was changed. The fragile qualities seemed to have gone from his chin. His mouth was less full than it had been. The lines of the lips were straighter. But in his eyes, the greatest change had taken place. There was no laughter in them anymore, nor any bashfulness. They were sharp and bright and purposeful.
I did as you said, Mama. I went to the house of Mrs. Rodriguez. She was very friendly. We were sitting in the kitchen. People came to see her. There was much wine to drink, and I drank of the wine. There was a quarrel. The man came towards me to do me harm, and then the knife, it went from my hand almost by itself before I knew it. I am a man now, Mama. The man said names to me, names which I could not allow, names which I could not say to you, else I would not be a man.
Yes, thou art a man, my poor little Pepe. Thou art a man. I have seen it coming on thee. I have watched you throwing the knife into the post, and I have been afraid. Come, we must get you ready. Emilio, Rosie, wake up.
What is it, Mama?
Emilio, go up and catch the other horse for Pepe. Quickly now. Pepe, you heard no one on the road behind you?
No, Mama. I listened carefully. No one was on the road.
Come, there is no time to waste. My son, do not stop until it is dark again. Do Do not sleep, even though you are tired. Take care of the horse in order that he may not stop of weariness. Remember to be careful with the bullets, eh? There are only 10. And forget not thy prayers.
Goodbye, Emilio. Rosie, look after our mama. Goodbye, Mama.
Go now. Do not wait to be caught like a chicken.
See, Mama, I am a man.
Mama stood stiffly in front of her doorstep, and on either side of her stood Emilio and Rosie. They cast furtive glances at Mama now and then. When the gray shape of Pepe melted into the hillside and disappeared, Mama relaxed. She began the high, whining keen of the death wail.
Our beautiful, our brave, our protector, our son is gone. Our beautiful, our brave is gone.
It was the formal wail. It rose to a high, piercing whine and subsided to a moan. Mama raised it 3 times and went into the house and shut the door. Emilio and Rosie stood wondering in the dawn. They heard Mama whimpering in the house. They went out to sit on the cliff above the ocean. They touched shoulders.
When did Pepe come to be a man? Last night. In Monterey.
The ocean clouds turned red with the sun that was behind the mountains.
We will have no breakfast. Mama will not want to cook. Where is Pepe gone, Rosie?
Rosie looked around at him. She drew her knowledge from the quiet air.
He has gone on a journey. He will never come back. Is he dead? Do you think he is dead?
Rosie looked back at the ocean again. A little steamer drawing a line of smoke sat on the edge of the horizon.
He is not dead, Emilio. Not yet.
Now, America's lusty, lively beer, Carling Black Label. Man, oh man, this is what real beer is all about. Strong, husky, lusty to the last lively drop. Carling Black Label is enjoyed all over America and in 50 countries around the world. Any beer this popular you should ask for. Go for the man's brand, America's own Carling Black Label beer, and get that lusty, lively taste that makes the difference. Carling Black Label is brewed in South Africa and is on sale in the Transvaal, Orange Free State, and Northwestern Cape, and now also in Natal, coming to the Cape Province before long. Carling Black Label, America's lusty, lively beer.
Pepe rested the big rifle across the saddle in front of him. The high shoulder of the canyon closed in. His horse stretched out its neck and sighed and settled to the trail. It was a well-worn path, dark, soft, leaf-mold earth strewn with broken pieces of sandstone. The trail rounded the shoulder of the canyon and dropped steeply into the bed of the stream. In the shallows, the water ran smoothly, glinting in the first morning sun. The path went into the stream and emerged on the other side, where the canyon sides became steep, and the first giant sentinel redwoods guarded the trail, great round red trunks bearing foliage as green and lacy as ferns. Pepe rode half over in his saddle, dangling one leg loosely. Suddenly he squared in his saddle.
Huh? What's that? Come on, swing over. That's it. Quickly over behind the redwood tree. That's it. Whoa. I must pull right on the reins. No noise, pony. No noise.
sound of the hooves died away, Pepe came back into the trail again. He didn't relax in the saddle anymore. He lifted the big rifle and swung the lever over to throw a shell into the chamber. And then he let down the hammer.
So, now we must be ready for what may happen.
The trail grew very steep. Now the redwood trees were smaller and their tops were dead, bitten dead where the wind reached them. The horse plodded on. The sun went slowly overhead and started down toward the afternoon. As soon as the trail had parted from the stream, the trees were gone, and only the thick, brittle sage and manzanita and chaparral edged the trail.
Now I am in the open. I can be seen from a distance. The further I go, the more rough is the country, and the more dry it becomes. I must drink only a little water at a time.
The way wound about the bases of great square rocks. Eastward, the bare Rocky Mountain tops were pale and powdered dry under the dropping sun. The horse plodded on and up the trail toward a little V in the ridge, which was the pass. Pepe looked suspiciously back every minute or so, and his eyes sought the tops of the ridges ahead. The air was parched and full of light dust blown by the breeze from the eroding mountain. Pepe drank from his bag and corked it tightly and hung it on the horn again. The trail moved up the dry, stale hillside, avoiding rocks, dropping under cliffs, climbing in and out of old water scars. When he arrived at the little pass, he stopped and looked back for a long time. The trail behind was empty. Only the high tops of the redwoods indicated where the stream flowed. Pepe rode on through the moss.
Oh, I have never been so tired. My eyes are so heavy, I can hardly lift lids with my fingers. I can't stop now. I must go on.
The high mountain wind coasted sighing through the pass and whistled on the edges of the big blocks of broken granite. Pepe went slowly through the broken, jagged pass and looked down on the other side. The trail dropped quickly, staggering among broken rock. At the bottom of the slope, there was a dark crease, thick with brush, and on the other side of the crease, a little flat in which a grove of oak trees grew. A scar of green grass cut out across the flat. And behind the flat, another mountain rose, desolate with dead rocks and starving little black bushes. Pepe drank from the bag again, for the air was so dry it encrusted his nostrils and burned his lips. Finally, he rode out over the flat to the green streak, and at the upper end of the damp, he found a little spring welling out of the earth and dropping into a dug basin before it seeped out over the flat.
Once more, I am lucky with the water. If only I had my knife with which to cut the jerky. But now my father's knife is gone forever.
The moon came up and filled the valley with a cold blue light, and the wind swept rustling down from the peaks. Pepe muttered his prayers, put his head on his arm, and went instantly to sleep.
What was that? I must move quickly. They're close by. I wasn't there how long that I've slept. That's it. Water sack. Jerky. I've lost my hat. Too late to look now. I must go.
It was velvet dark. The moon had slipped behind the western ridge, leaving the valley in darkness behind it. The horse had struggled far up the trail when the first change of dawn came into the air. The steel grayness of light mixed thoroughly with dark. The sharp, snuggled edge of the ridge stood out above them, rotten granite tortured and eaten by winds of time. Gradually, the light flowed down over the ridge. The starved brush and rocks stood out in the half-light, strange and lonely in high perspective. Then there came warmth into the light.
The sky is turning blue. I can see no one down there in the valley from which I've come. They've shot my horse. That was close. There is so little cover. What can I do?
He crawled up the hill on his knees and one hand. His right hand held the rifle up off the ground and pushed it ahead of him. He moved with the instinctive care of an animal. Rapidly, he wormed his way towards one of the big outcroppings of granite on the hill above him. Where the brush was high, he doubled up and ran. But where the cover was slight, he wriggled forward on his stomach, pushing his rifle ahead of him. In the last little distance, there was no cover at all. Pepe poised and then darted across the space and flashed around the corner of the rock. He leaned panting against the stone. When his breath came easier, he moved along behind the big rock until he came to a narrow split. A split that appeared to have a thin section of vision down the hill. The sun reddened the western ridges, and already the buzzards were settling down toward the place where the horse lay. Pepe lay on his stomach and pushed the rifle hard through the slit and waited.
There was a movement down there. I'm sure of it. See, there it is again. About a quarter of a mile down there. I must sight carefully. There it is again. Now. Now it is still. Man, the bullet. No, it is a sharp piece of stone between the knuckles. Pull it out. There. The wound is bleeding even. Nothing inside is cut. I can block it with this spider's web. That's better. The bleeding has nearly stopped already.
The rifle was on the ground. Pepe picked it up, levered a new shell into the chamber, and then slid into the bush on his stomach. Far to the right he crawled, and then up the hill, moving slowly and carefully, crawling to cover and resting, and then crawling again. Pepe crawled in the general direction of the ridge peak, zigzagging for cover. The deep cut between his knuckles began to throb. When the sun slid past noon, he hadn't gone a mile. He was pushing the rifle with his left hand now. His lips and tongue were growing thick and heavy. At last, he crawled desperately into a patch of high, sharp manzanita and dropped his head on his left arm. He went to sleep as he lay, and the sun beat on his back. The sun went down behind the peaks, and the cool evening came, and then it was dark. After a while, the old moon came up and showed the jagged ridge on top ahead of him. His hand was swollen and heavy. A little thread of pain ran up the inside of his arm and settled in a pocket in his armpit. The moon was at meridian when Pepe came at last to the sharp backbone of the ridgetop, and the last 100 yards was on solid rock.
I thought I would never make it. I must go on. I must. At the bottom of this cut. The brush is thick and dark. Maybe there's water down there. I must try and get there. It is easier downhill.
On the other side, the hill rose up sharply, and at the top, the jagged, rotten teeth of the mountain showed against the sky. At the bottom, Pepe crawled into the heavy brush, feeling with his fingers for water. There was no water in the bed of the stream, only damp earth. Pepe laid his gun down and scooped up a handful of mud and put it into his mouth.
The mud draws my mouth like a poultice. I must dig into the bed with my fingers. I can make a basin to catch the water.
Pepe's brain spun in a big spiral up and away from him. The moon moved over the sky. Pepe half turned on his back. He tried to make words, but only a thick hissing came from between his lips. When the dawn came, Pepe pulled himself up. His eyes were clear again. He drew his great popped arm in front of him and looked at the angry wound. The black line ran up from his wrist to his armpit. Must cut it open. Where is my knife? I must cut it open. Oh, I had forgotten. A sharp stone. That... I'll do it. That's it. Pepper's whole right side shuddered at the pain, but the pain had cleared his head. In the gray light, he struggled up the last slope to the ridges and crawled over and lay down behind a line of rocks. Below him lay a deep canyon exactly like the last, waterless and desolate. There was no flat, no oak trees, not even heavy brush at the bottom of it. And on the other side, a sharp ridge stood up, thinly brushed with sage, littered with broken granite. The new day was light now. The flame of the sun came over the ridge and fell on Pepe where he lay on the ground. His coarse black hair was littered with twigs and bits of spiderweb. His eyes had retreated back into his head. Between his lips, the tip of his black tongue showed. He sat up and dragged his great arm into his lap and nursed it, rocking his body and moaning in his throat. He threw back his head and looked up into the pale sky. A big black bird circled nearly out of sight, and far to the left another was sailing near. He lifted his head to listen, for a familiar sound had come to him from the valley he'd climbed out of. It was the crying yelp of hounds excited on a trail. Pepe bowed his head quickly. He tried to speak rapid words, but only a thick hiss came from his lips. He drew a shaky cross across his breast with his left hand. It was a long struggle to get to his feet. He crawled slowly and mechanically to the top of a big rock on the ridge peak. Once there, he rose slowly, swaying to his feet, and stood erect. Far below, he could see the dark brush where he'd slept. He braced his feet and stood there, black against the morning sky. There came a ripping sound at his feet. A piece of stone flew up and a bullet droned off into the next gorge. Pepe looked down for a moment and then pulled himself straight again. His body jarred back. His left hand fluttered helplessly towards his breast. Pepe swayed forward and toppled from the rock. His body struck and rolled over and over, starting a little avalanche. When at last he stopped against a bush, the avalanche slid slowly down and covered up his head.
Ever had a frosty can of beer and no can opener? Frustrating, huh? But that was then. Now it's pop, peel, pour. America's lusty, lively beer, Carling Black Label in sensational new ring pull cans. You wrap your finger through the ring, pull, and pour. That's Carling Black Label in new ring pull cans, on sale in the Transvaal, Orange Free State, and Northwestern Cape, and now also in Natal. Coming to the Cape Province before long.
Tonight's Carling Country Story was written by the American master John Steinbeck, and the music was especially composed by Sam Splair. Next week, be sure to listen to the story of one of man's greatest achievements, the conquest of space, the story of Major Gordon Cooper in Carling Country.